Cool.
So here you are sleeping, breathing out for 8 hours, right? You've lost a lot of water. You've lost a lot of water. So when you wake up in the morning, you're at your most dehydrated state, but you're at the most perfect state to rehydrate, because now your stomach is hopefully empty and you can start pounding it back, because water and food are not the same thing. They kind of interfere with each other. So when you drink water first thing in the morning on an empty stomach, you are at your most dehydrated state, but you are your most perfect state to rehydrate, because your stomach is empty and you can absorb it. And that's the trick. It's not so much how much water you're drinking, it's how you're drinking it, when you're drinking it. So if you start doing stuff like that, that's a whole nother level of using the spring water. It's one thing to come to a spring and use glass bottles and shield it from light, warmth, and oxygen, but it's another thing to know how to use it. And that's really what it's all about, right? And this is something you learn. Like you just, it's not like, boom, okay, I'm drinking spring water and I know everything there is. Nobody knows everything there is to know. You just know how to use it properly. And,
that does come from experience.
Yeah. Now, typically, what's going to happen is a typical alkaline water, if you're drinking that with meal, that's going to interfere, because that's going to dilute. If you're drinking alkaline water like Ancaster, I wouldn't drink that with meals, because your stomach is highly acidic, and it needs to be, and here you are pounding back alkaline water. So what's going to happen is it's going to screw up your whole digestive system kind of thing, because your stomach's going to have to compensate for that alkalinity coming through in the form of water. Where if you drink, you can help your digestion by drinking acidic water, and that'll actually help the acidity. That hydrogen will actually help in the digestion process. So like Perrier was kind of famous in the 70s for, people kind of knew that, the carbonated water, the Perrier, that kind of actually did something for people, and they realized, hey, this is helping me with digestion. And they're right, because it's an acidic, and that the acidic sort of compounds that were involved in that water, they did help with digestion. So that's another cool thing to learn about, But like I said, we're always learning and just doing the best you can. But you got to realize that water is number one. No matter how well you eat, no matter how well you exercise, guess what? In the end of the day, you're not mostly, and I love superfoods. I live on superfoods. Bee pollen, raw cacao, honey, goji berries, chaga mushroom. Check it out. Thank you, sir.
Fresh pick this morning.
Like, how awesome is that? So basically, long story short, is no matter how well you eat and no matter how many superfoods you eat, at the end of the day, you are not mostly goji berries, or you're not mostly cacao, you're not mostly ravioli, you're not mostly lasagna, you're not mostly bison meat, you're not mostly grass-fed organic Jersey cows.
You're mostly water.
You're mostly water. So guess what's number one? Water. It's all about the water. But you look at yourself, you look at your solid being, and you don't realize that. I don't feel like mostly water, but hey, your skin is mostly water, your brain is mostly water, your eyes are mostly water, your blood is mostly water. This is what it's all about. When you start building your blood out of spring water, you got 4 liters of blood. 4 liters of blood. You come here with 23 liters, 23 liter glass bottle, you start sucking that back over the week. Tell me what your blood is going to do. You know what I mean? It's actually going to come to life for the first time. If I've known people that, 32 years, they've never had a drop of spring water in their life.
I heard I think an analogy, I don't know if it was from David Wolfe, but I think you were in it, but somebody compared it to like a fish tank. Was that in that video?
Daniel Vitalis, yeah.
Oh, was that Daniel Vitalis? Okay.
Basically, his analogy was, look, if you know anything about aquariums, okay, well, the fish in that aquarium is basically, those are equivalent to our cells. You can use the best fish food on planet Earth. If that water is shit, those fish are toast. Okay, that's all there is to it. Now, in our human body, we're much like an aquarium. Daniel Vitalis says, think of the fish. Think that as like our cells. Like our cells in our body are like a fish in a fish tank. And so, like, if your water is toast, guess what? Your cells aren't going to be happy. Your cells are mostly water.
No matter how much good food you feed the fish.
And I'm not saying go to spring water, consume spring water and go eat McDonald's, you'll be fine. You could probably get away with it a lot better, obviously.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But what I'm saying is, food is up here, water is up here. And then, you get into oxygen and stuff like that. That's a little bit different. But, essentially, I was always led to believe that oxygen is the most important part of air. In fact, is actually, I believe, nitrogen, if I'm not mistaken. That's actually what mostly is in the air. So we kind of learned, we kind of been taught a few falsities.
Yeah, I think we're at a
obviously-
very exciting time for correcting those things that you're bringing up now. That I was brought up to believe a lot of these things that you're saying false.
Yeah, we have to unlearn
Yeah,
everything that
yeah.
we've quote unquote learned, because
Yeah.
I mean, the people that taught us didn't always have our best interest in mind. In fact,
That's
they
right.
never did. All they really did, it's different. If your parents, okay, let's talk about this for a second. I'm proud. I'm proud of my parents. My parents are Italian immigrants. My dad came over in 57. My mom came over in 64 when they were about 16, 17. They grew up in a small mountain village in the Abruzzo region. You talk about the best water on earth. That's where it is, in the high mountain areas of Abruzzo. The parents were the village where my parents are from, it's called Galliano Eterno. And my dad came over in 57, around 16. My mom 64, 16-ish. Can you imagine that's all the water they had was spring-fed mountain water all their life. They come off the boat, 57. I could just imagine my dad's face when he came into Hamilton and drank some tap water out of Lake Ontario. He must have lost his mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And actually, my mom the same thing. So basically, me being born here in 67, I look at myself as the first tap water generation in my lineage.
Yeah.
Because, I tell you, my parents, for the first 16, 17 years of life, they had nothing but mountain spring water, the best. My grandparents, same thing. My great-grandparents, same thing. Okay, go back. There was no tap water, okay? So here comes me, born in 67. I am the first tap water generation in my lineage. That's the way it works. And we're trying to correct that, My first spring water, my dad used to bring me to springs when I was a kid. I didn't understand it. It was just a freaky thing for me to see, for me to go out and, get spring water with my dad. And basically, because there was a bit of a language barrier, he didn't speak English very well, and I didn't speak Italian very well at that age. So all he would say to me was, we're going to get water. Why? Because it's good water. You know what I mean? But there was no explanation. So even as a kid going up to, 6, 7 years old, going up to the Wasaga Beach area where we go to Midland and Elmvale. We pass through Elmvale to get to Bomb Beach and Wasaga Beach. We drive through Elmvale, and every single time, faithfully, we'd stop at the spring, and my dad and my uncle would fill up, and it's just like, what is this? I don't get this. What are you doing? And they would just it would be like, in fact, it became very obvious that we were actually really going there, for a vacation, but really we were going there to get some water. You know what I mean?
That's awesome.
It's crazy. But I'll tell you something. I've been to Italy 3 times. Once in 74, I was 6 turning 7. Once in 84, when I was 16 turning 17. And we returned just recently in 2009 for 2 weeks. Now in 74 and 84, we would stay the whole summer. So the whole month of July and the whole month of August is what we do. And we would spend the majority of that time in this little mountain village called Galliano Eterno. I don't remember too much when I was 6 turning 7 and 74, but I'll tell you something. When I was in 84, when I was 16 turning 17, that was my first epiphany, or I realized that at that point that, not all water is created equal. I didn't understand it, but I can tell you one thing for sure is in 84, when I started drinking the spring water out of the main fountain, Galliano, underneath the Castello, it's called Fontana della Valle or something like that. It was actually built, this fountain was built in 1300s, in the Middle Ages, what's that period of time called? Medieval times. It was a medieval fountain built in the 1343 or 1334 or something like that. And basically what they did is, up higher in the mountains, there's a spot where the actual source is. They call that canale. That's where the water comes from. And they piped it down to the main village, and it started coming out. Well, long story short, I started drinking this water in July and August of 1984 because there really is nothing else to drink. And within a short period of time, I realized that my body could not get enough of this water, no matter how much I drank.
So it was like a magnet.
It would keep coming, it would keep sending me back. And next thing you know, I'm hanging there all day, drinking. And basically what was happening is I didn't understand this at the time. When I came back in 84, talking to my friends, 16, 17 years old, it's like, the water in Italy is amazing. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, I don't know, it was just cold, whatever. I couldn't really explain it. But I realized now what was happening is after 16, 17 years of drinking Ontario dead tap water from these Great Lakes, which are now known as the Great Sewer, which is basically recycled toilet water. That's all it is.
Yep.
Whatever you flush goes out to that lake and then comes back in through your tap. That's a closed system. That's recycled toilet water. That's what tap water is. So after 16, 17 years of drinking that stuff, here I find myself in 84 in Italy drinking the best water in the world, and my body's responding very, very well. And essentially what was happening is I was experiencing hydration for the first time in my life.
Wow.
And that's actually profound. To actually experience hydration, like I'm 16, 17 years old drinking this water. Can you imagine, someone in the 50s or 60s or 70s drinking this water for the first time in their life? Their body would freak. And my body freaked out in 84. And, here we are, like 29 years later, drinking this stuff. And it's just like,
I think that's kind of how I feel about superfood right now, is I'm getting that awakening from it. So I'm really excited to get on the spring water, like you're explaining that's going to take me to another level too.
Yeah, it's kind of, this stuff is kind of hard to explain, and you can't really put it down on paper. When you go through the experience of feeling hydration, real hydration for the first time, and feeling nutrition for the first time, real nutrition. I'm not talking,
I know. I was
vitamin
raised
C from
at,
Shoppers Drug Mart. I'm talking vitamin C from cacao. I'm talking real magnesium and crazy doses, like goji berries. Like, what's going on with that? You can't explain to people what you go through, what your mind goes through, what your blood goes through, what your body goes through, what your thoughts go through, your brain, your body responds. You could be like me. You could grow up on the worst food and worst water ever, and basically, after 40 and a half years, and start turning things around, and your body within days and weeks can actually start rebuilding itself properly. And then here we are. I didn't really make a healthy move until April 7th, 2008. That's the first day I ever walked into goodness me, consciously trying to possibly do intentionally something positive for my health. It was April 7th, 2008. I remember I walked out with goji berry. No, sorry. The first time I walked out with coconut oil, raw apple cider vinegar, digestive enzymes, and the Vital Greens super green thing from Naka Herbs. Those are the 4 things I started with. I didn't really know how to use them. I just started pounding them down.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing too.
Pain.
Yeah.
On my kitchen, I was just like, wow. Just pounding back coconut oil, sucking back raw apple cider vinegar, digestive enzymes, and these Naka green, this Vital Greens Naka Herbs thing. That was great. The next day I walked in after discovering David Wolfe and looking. Next time I walked out with goji berries, cacao, coconut oil again, and some other. I can't remember what had happened the second time, but it was definitely cacao on the second trip and goji berries on the second trip, and it was like, okay, this is a little bit.
It's
more
funny
doable,
that water took you there, and then the food's taken me back to water.
Yeah, and like I said, I'll be honest with you, this was in April of 2008 when I started changing my diet to something that actually made sense nutritionally. I was off tap water at that stage, and I was drinking, quote unquote spring water in plastic bottles, like bottled water, because I really didn't know the difference. I didn't know there was a difference. Not until probably September of 2008, later on that year, that I tuned into Daniel Vitalis, and he's like, no, you got to drink from springs. This is where it's all about. And then it was just like one thing led to another. And then eventually, after knowing that, then I started to realize what happened to me in 84 in Italy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that's really, other than the odd sporadic time that we'd be going with my parents or up in Palm Beach or whatever, that would be the only time really that I'd be, getting the spring water was that time in 84. So it kind of all made sense at that point. And it was just like, oh, that's what happened to me in 1984.
Yeah.
I was drinking natural spring water. My body's freaking out. It's experiencing hydration for the first time. And it's basically going through a really, really crazy process of, getting as much as it can, because it doesn't know when it's, oh my God, when's the next time you're going to get this water? So my body kind of forced me to go back there daily for the 2 months that we spent in it. So
very cool.
So so long story short,